Okay,
Back with it.
back with it. So we cut it into two.
Yeah, I got
The
over
recap-
40 minutes.
Yeah. So the recap got kind of long. So we're cutting it into two parts instead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you had ChatGPT make you some notes for the first part. I haven't done that. I'm just raw dogging it, and then I'll just
Respect.
miss what I miss, and then remember what I remember, I suppose.
Maybe I can help you.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. So we start off by where we left off. Aki got 35 new children. The Velsa's army and the strong adventurers won against the undead army,
Yes.
and we had the choice to either follow the undead army back to find out more information as to where they come from, and maybe find out where the lich that command them has its base or crypt, I suppose, or follow the lead of Dr. Hiller, the crazy scientist that made mutants at the very beginning of the campaign, where that leads back to Dullen instead, which Aki wanted to do because Aki and Kara is from Dullen, and Aki misses his dad's money.
Yes.
But Aki got outvoted. So instead, we end up following the undead army, which ties more into Krogger's background,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember correctly. So he wants to do that.
And if I can add something.
Yeah, of course, just
The whole thing with the undead army and all that, that's where we have to name our group something.
oh yeah.
And I really don't remember what our real name is, but Aki is like very firm on. They are called Aki's disciples.
Disciples.
Yeah.
He copied Grog,
Yeah.
another
Because
adventure group.
I was like, Aki want this as well, and then every time someone asks, what are you guys called?
Yeah.
Aki just chimes in. We're called Aki's disciples.
Yeah.
And then everybody either sighs or like no.
Yeah. Yeah. So at this point, Kara doesn't protest anymore. She just lets Aki say
now.
whatever. Yeah.
But
In the beginning, she protested, but at this point, she's like, he's gonna say whatever. But our real name, which is written in Lasse's RDM's notes, isn't much better. Because at that point, we were like, oh yeah, Shadow Wizard Money Gang. We love casting spells and all that. Yeah, so that dumb meme. that dumb meme had like a renaissance period in our friend group. So we ended up being called the Shadow Money Gang. And that's
almost as good.
almost as good. No wizards, so just the Shadow Money Gang.
Yeah.
So that became a party name. It's not the worst if you compare it to other adventuring group names that Lasse has made, because there's Krog's Disciples, and then there's the 7
Anointed? Is it a?
I don't know.
Like they
the
are
7
like
Chosen or
very
something like that.
righteous about themselves.
Yeah, then there's this group called the Chosen 7, and then there's another group, Thrill of the Hunt, which we end up being partied with when going to collect information about the undead army. And that's because they're a more seasoned or veteran adventuring party, which are several levels above us at this point. I think we're level 6 or 7 at this point in the story. So they're far above us strength-wise. So they teach us the ropes when traveling outside of the big cities, like Velse, Dolan, or Leti. So they like they do most of the fighting, unless there's a fight that's easy enough for us to do.
Yeah.
And then that's
they
also where
let us fight them.
Yeah, they let us fight them so we can get some experience, and that's also where our DM introduces a gathering mechanic, I guess.
Yeah.
It's where you can roll survival on monsters or creatures like that. So normally you can like loot intelligent beings for their loot, but monsters and other creatures like that don't have gold on them perchance. So instead we got this mechanic where you can roll a survival check to like collect materials, rare materials from monsters we defeated. And he introduced this through this other adventuring parties that were seasoned, which was kind of cool, I think. It was a good way to do it, as it wasn't a mechanic that he had thought of when starting the campaign, but he and I made it, I think, a session or two before it was introduced, just because we wanted another way for there to be like a reward for defeating big monsters, which wasn't just a quest reward from the guild. So to get more money, essentially, which everyone wants. But we fight some smaller fights, and thrill of the hunt, the veteran party fight most of the parts.
They get most of the action.
They get most of the action. I don't actually remember what any of them are called. But while
it was a good.
There were 5 or 6, I think.
5, 6, and then there were like, of course, there were an elf, a human, and a dwarf, and then
there was a tiefling as well.
Tiefling, yeah.
And I don't remember the last 2.
No, they didn't.
They had a varied party. It was a paladin, a fighter, a rogue, a wizard, a cleric. I think like something like that.
Very so it was a typical cool like D&D party.
Yeah, it was.
Everybody got something to add to the.
Yeah, it was quite a well-rounded party. I think so too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Did I turn this? I forgot to turn this on. Yes. Well, on the way to the swamp of Cthulhu, which we talked about the first recording. In the first recording, we talked about but we talked about the swamp of Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah.
It's north of Wales, on the map of the continent. And we follow the undead army up to there. But on the way, we get stopped by some merfolk. We have an encounter with some scary octopuses or something like that. And then we encounter some merfolk, which tie into Crocker's backstory. But they drag him away. So we don't actually get to learn this in character. We just hear about it out of character at the table. So we don't actually know much about that. And I think the following session, one of our newest members get introduced.
Yeah.
At some point in the recap that you did, we lost the player of Brise to scheduling conflicts.
Yeah.
She didn't die. It was just scheduling conflicts. She couldn't show up. So we got a new player into the party, which shows up here on the way following the undead army on the way to the Lich's Swamp. And this is where the character in Pecketum gets introduced, I think it's called. Which is a human cleric. Human cleric, yeah. Which was quite a character. It was a cleric that worshipped Lathander, I think so. But
in a world where we don't even know if there's any gods left.
Yeah, in a world where the DM explicitly has told us that all of the gods have killed each other. When the new player shows up, I want to play a cleric of Lathander, which is interesting, and there was some interesting things there. The way that character is introduced is that some of the civilians that were kidnapped from the cities around Vels were being transported on caravans, and in was on one of these caravans, but cut himself loose from the caravan and escaped and ran over to us. But because he's such a good person, he wants to help the others on the caravan as well. So he joins the party and follows the undead army into the swamp with us, which normally would be quite a dangerous place to be, but for some reason it's silent. Maybe because there's an undead army marching through.
Maybe.
And we arrive at a crypt entrance where the veteran party, Thrill of the Hunt, go down into the crypt, and we wait for them to come back up, but a day goes by and then one of them comes up, tells us to go down there with them, and we see that
it's not really quite
real...
that. She comes up to like inform us how it's going.
Oh.
And then we thought, oh, we should go down with you, right? And then she doesn't protest or anything and just said, okay.
Yeah.
And then when we get down there, the whole party's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, why did you join? This is too dangerous.
Yeah.
But we found that there's some ritual going on where the Lich sacrifices this human civilians to gain strength or something like that. Lich stuff, I guess. I don't know much about it. This go back. Yeah, and we escape from there. And while escaping, the seasoned adventuring party managed to actually rescue one more civilian, which is a dragonborn. Later we find out it's a dragonborn sorcerer called Bron, and this is where our newest player joins the group.
Yeah.
Making this the group 6 players and 1 DM, which is a big group and a lot of people around the table. So combat takes quite a while sometimes. That's what happens. Yeah, but that's where the newest player gets introduced, which is a Dragonborn sorcerer with a custom subclass and a lot of things to go into there, but I'll skip it. We managed to escape from the swamp without many problems, if I remember.
Yeah, it was still silent out.
Yeah.
As it was in.
Yeah. So we escape without any problems and get back to the city, and we warn the guild leader Marcus that something should be done, and there's all these civilians, tens of thousands, that are getting sacrificed to the Lich, and we should save them. However, at this point, summer arrives in the world, and in this world, summer arrives for like 2 weeks at a time. So you have 3 seasons, which are just fall, spring, summer. There's no real winter, and the summer lasts for like 2 weeks, and the summer is. It starts with a second moon appearing in the sky, which is kind of green, and this second moon is like highly magical, and then it makes everything on the continent also highly magical. And then plants begin growing unimaginably fast, and wild monsters mutate and gain new strength and get stronger, and I think some spells even go wild magic sometimes as well for everyone. But like things like that, magic gets crazy for like 2 weeks. So the guild leader Marcus says that we can't do a rescue mission as summer is starting. And that's also where, while summer is going on, a lot of harvesting of material from plants and from animals and things like that take place. So much of Vels and the other cities, their economy depend on the summer period and collecting resources while the summer is there for 2 weeks. So this whole plot with the undead army is like just put on hold.
Yeah.
And while it's put on hold, we have 2 sessions where we have to be bodyguards for these collectors of some material. There are like these crabs that grow crystals on their backs, and it grows especially fast during the summer, and they have to collect these crystals, and we have to guard them while they do this. And
and then we just butcher a lot of merfolk.
Yeah, we butcher a lot of merfolk and other sea creatures, and this takes 2 whole sessions with just combat. So, yeah, that took a while. But we pick the main story back up when summer ends. At the end of summer, there's a festival to signal the end of summer and to celebrate all of the harvest. And here at the festival, Krogger decides to put up a booth to sell something, or what was
it was I don't know what you would call it, but it's like a typical thing for like circuses to have like this clown sitting on a like some kind of lever, and if you hit the target with a ball,
you throw a ball,
and if you hit the target, they get dumped in the water. But he's a frog, so it's not that big of a deal for him. Like
he needs to get wet anyway.
Yeah, so
it's kind of part of the character.
He just likes it, but and he gets to insult people as well. But
and Aki helps him with this.
And
right?
and Aki helps him like getting people towards the booth, and Kroger just like disses a lot of people, and then I think Thunderbeard.
I don't remember what everyone else was doing.
He helped as well, like just pushing people towards the booth instead
just
of
gathering
talking.
people. He's like,
just go over here.
You over there, you look like you can throw a ball far. Try and hit this target.
Yeah.
And then Kroger starts insulting them.
Yeah.
And while this is happening, Aki also manages to hook up with more women.
Yes.
He gets during the festival alone, you get 7 more children or something like that. If I remember correctly.
I don't remember how I got the time to that. For that, but I did.
Yeah,
I did.
So yeah, we're like at this point, if Aki has a sexual encounter, we skip over it, but
it would be pretty
DM
weird.
Lasse. Yeah,
if
DM,
I had to.
No. But our DM rolls for pregnancy, and Aki just rolls high every time. So at this point, Aki has impregnated. Super sperm. At this point, Aki has impregnated over 40 or something women in the city, and he's just trying to become this new Genghis Khan. The secret subplot of Aki becoming the new Genghis Khan and just being the father to all children in Vels at some point. But
like everybody has some kind
that's
of
a funny side plot
feature of Aki in like 100 years or something.
Yeah, in 100 years you'll have a lot of grandchildren or grandchildren. However, the festival goes on. Kara uses all her gold to buy Aki a magic item. And this is the most clutch. Yeah, it's the most clutch persuasion roll I've ever rolled.
Okay.
Because this magic item is supposed to cost like 350 gold. I have 220 at best. Yeah. Something like that. And I just fully commit to the persuasion roll and tell the shopkeeper, like, I'm buying this because I'm worried that my younger brother is gonna die, because in our adventuring groups we've been close to dying several times, and this weighs on me. And as I roleplay this, I roll persuasion, and I get like a 23. And I just sit there looking at my DM, and I'm like, give me the item, just give it to me. And while I'm trying to roleplay this with my DM, the rest of the table are wildly distracted because we have a running gag, and everyone else is doing that running gag, the ketchup bottle. Yeah. Everyone else is doing this running gag and being loud and obnoxious, and I'm trying to roleplay this with the DM, which I pull off, and then I have to disrupt you, David, to look at you and be like, okay, serious roleplay, 5 minutes. And then we have this sweet moment of roleplay that
everybody's just screaming at each other,
being annoying. Yeah, so we have this really touching moment, and our DM is the only one who actually notices, and the 4 other players at the table are just laughing, having fun. It's fun. It's not like it's not too annoying, but it's a fun contrast.
Yeah.
That we have this touching moment where Kara's like, Aki, I'm actually afraid to lose you. And early in the session, Aki began asking everyone what their worst fears was.
Yeah.
I think you learned a new spell and you were like, oh, I'll just ask what everyone's worst fear is. And Aki and Kara actually got into a discussion early in the session because Kara didn't want to tell, which leads to this touching moment where Kara's like, oh, it's my worst fear is actually losing my family and you.
As a part of her family.
Yeah, her little brother, right?
Yeah.
So this touching moment and everyone else being loud next to it is kind of a funny contrast. I look back on it and I find it fun. It's nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Also because I've thought of that role play moment for quite a while. I was browsing magic items at some point, and I just saw the magic item and I just knew, okay, this is what I'll do. I just knew that it's cool. It's cool to do it, to have thought of like a roleplay moment and then being able to.
And then you're like out of game. Put me in a situation where now I have to help you with it. You just put me in like a chokehold. Help me.
Yeah.
With the next item I want.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't. Out of game, you came up with the plan to collect items to get a stronger piece of armor or something like that. Yeah. So basically, you're saving up for an item for me, and I didn't say you should do it, but you said you would do it back, and then I'm like, oh yeah, yes you will.
Yeah.
Hopefully, at some point it has.
That's not how I remember the conversation, but it's okay, Mikas. But yeah, what happened next?
So after the festival, you can correct me if you want to.
I will.
After the festival, the rescue mission of all the civilians is launched.
Yes.
So the main story is put on hold for 2 sessions, and then we return to like this pressing matter of actually saving civilians, and 2 weeks go by in game. So these civilians, they're probably dead. Most of them, some of them, I don't know to what degree they are dead, but it kind of been good for them to just ignore them for 2 weeks.
But more than 2 weeks. It was like 2 months. But yeah.
It's 2 months?
Yeah. The travel time and all that.
That's true. There's a far travel time to the swamp. That's right, there's 2 months. So
I don't know.
A lot of time goes by.
A lot, yeah.
Between the civilians having been caught and us coming back with the Vel's army and most of all adventures.
Yeah.
And since we are low-level adventurers, we get stationed at the perimeter of the swamp, at like a caravan with resources to help escape with the civilians. So basically, when the many thousand civilians get pulled out of the swamp, they can get like put on caravans and wagons and have a lot of food ready for them to actually make the journey back, because they're probably quite malnutritioned. And some days go by while we protect this one point.
Yeah.
There's more points, but we're at one point with two other adventuring groups, and then we take shifts, keeping guard. And while we keep guard, we notice that somewhere in the swamp there's this purple light shining out.
Yeah.
And we go to investigate it. And this purple light comes from this giant skull, the size of a house, or even a bigger. And it's coming from one of the eyes. And the skull has its mouth open, so some of us try to go in. But we have to roll a wisdom save, and then we take some psychic damage and roll a strength save, and then if we fail the strength save, we get thrown out.
And everybody did at first.
Everybody did get thrown out at first.
So at this point, everybody thinks, okay, it's just a damage thing. If we go in, we just get damaged a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
But then Aki joins with Kroger.
Yeah,
and then,
you were patrolling together.
Yeah.
And you saw the purple light.
And we were like, the other guys told us about it. Let's see if it's different with us. and then we went in. I think Carl was with us as well.
No, not at this point. I was patrolling within.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so me and Kroger got there, and then what did we?
I don't know. You kind of tried to go into the mouth, right?
Yeah.
Which didn't succeed.
No.
And then Kroger jumped onto the skull. And instead of going in through the mouth, he tried going in through one of the eye sockets where
I think you're jumping ahead of yourself.
Is that jumping out?
Because there's a whole thing where me and you and is the only ones left.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, that's where.
Will you tell it?
I think it's just where I try and go in to the skull. And I make the save, so I just wander around.
So we get fixated on the skull, except instead of doing our jobs.
Instead of patrolling and guarding the vans, we get fixated.
Fixated on this big skull and trying to get in it, even though we just get a lot of psychic damage every time. So.
Yeah, I'm engaging with this because I know out of game, and this might be metagaming much, but I know that out of game, our DM has told me at some point that there is this character that travels travels around dead bodies of gods, and then uses these places to set up like this magic shop or this place where you can make magic weapons and stuff like that. So I'm remembering this, and I'm like, okay, there's this huge skull. Its eyes are lighting up sometimes. This is probably the body of some dead god. So this is probably the thing. So I'm fixated on this because I know out of game, this is probably the thing the DM told me about a long time ago. So I keep being fixated on this, and I think everyone else is just interested. I don't know if anyone else knew this thing that me and the DM had talked about, but everyone is interested.
I did not know at the time.
No, but everyone keeps engaging with this skull.
Yeah, it's basically only In who was like, keep me out of this.
Yeah, because he In thinks it's unholy because it doesn't have anything to do with his god Thander.
Yeah.
So it's profane. But Kara walks into the skull, makes the saves, walks around in pitch black darkness for like an hour.
And for everybody else, she's gone. She just vanishes into the skull.
Yeah.
And we like try to get her out, but every time we just fail. And then I think Aki got stuck as well.
Yeah.
And then put his hand in to like just try to pick you.
Yeah.
Take Kara out.
Yeah.
And then he just got sucked in.
Yeah. Yeah, so we keep engaging with this, but nothing is really happening other than us taking damage and then disappearing for hours at a time. Because when you get sucked in, you get thrown out at some different point. You don't know when. It might happen a minute later and might happen 3 hours later.
Yeah.
So you kind of disappears for a couple, for a long time.
And everybody is like, what is happening? And having a discussion of, should we go in or should we wait? And you as Kara get the impression that you're just walking around this nothingness for hours.
Yeah. And at some point she gives up.
For Aki, he's just, the experience for him is just he's getting pulled in and then just gets spits out immediately. But in real time, it has been hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, Aki gets out and then joins the others and tells them the shtick with the skull, and then we go back and wait for Kara.
Yeah, basically. And then I think it's the next day where you and Krugger go over there. Or is it someone else? It's Krugger and someone. But basically, the day after, instead of one of the eyes lighting up, it's both at this point, I think.
Still one.
It's still one. Yeah. It might just still...
After his death.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert.
We told it in the first session.
That's true. Okay, so this is where Krugger dies.
Yeah.
So he ends up hopping onto the skull and then jumping into one of the eye sockets where the light is coming from. And he dies to psychic damage.
Yeah.
And because
how this session ends in some kind of way.
The session kind of stops there because some of like Kara, In, and Braun like arrive a bit later, and then In tries to use Revivify on Krugger, but because it has a timer of 1 minute to use it, it doesn't work, and Krugger dies.
And then there's like this weird silence around the table.
Yeah.
Because that's not how it's supposed to happen.
No.
And like
no,
everybody has like agreed that Krugger would die at some point.
Yes, because
of his antics. Because Krugger do a lot of. He does the most stupid thing you could think of in the moment, and then somehow gets away with it.
Yeah, he's gotten away with a lot.
Yeah.
And he keeps frontlining in all combat, even though he's a sorcerer with like 30 or 40 HP, even though... Yeah. So he keeps frontlining, getting one shot, and then getting knocked unconscious, and then healed up again. I did that. Okay.
No.
Funky. Sorry. So we didn't actually think that Krugger would die like this. And that's why everyone is surprised. We knew Krugger would die at some point because his play markers keeps putting him in situations that are kind of risky.
Yeah.
And then he just dies by psychic damage. while trying to jump into this god skull or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the session ends. It's kind of weird.
It ends with his burial.
Yeah.
So we bury him, and then, we bury him, and some of the players aren't with us at the burial, so we get in a discussion. Should we have waited for the other players?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Braun wasn't there, and they were friends and all that. So
yeah,
he got a bit mad at us.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, but should we just have let him?
Yeah, we couldn't have left.
Lay there.
We couldn't have left the dead body out, right?
But yeah, that's just how that part ends.
Yeah, no, there's like a session more after that.
Yeah,
the latest session you've been to.
Yeah.
Picks up where Marcus has a new character called Onyx, which is introduced with the skull that we've been fixated on the last session, finally doing the thing it's supposed to do, according to us. It's actually this kind of traveling tavern where the one controlling the tavern is the
real head of the guild.
Yeah, the real head of the guild called Tom, and we get reiterated that Marcus, the substitute guild leader, is actually more of the army leader, but because Tom lives in this traveling tavern, Marcus actually takes care of most of the logistics and day-to-day things. So we finally get introduced to Tom, which is kind of a weird character that has a visual that varies from player to player.
Yeah, so you like roll a D8, and then depends on what you hit. That is what you see.
Yeah.
So some of us see a beautiful woman. Some of us see a muscular guy, and then we have like a dad.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the roles is he looks like what a dad would look like to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a fun character concept for an interesting NPC that we'll probably see more of.
Introduced to Onyx.
Yeah. Marcus's new character Onyx, which is a Crowan. Another animal type race I suppose.
Which is also like a gag, like as we told in the first video as well.
Yeah. We
had this where he doesn't want us to call him an animal, but he's an animal person.
Yeah, he plays... Yeah, so he's like this... The Crowan is kind of like a crow, bird, humanoid-esque thing.
But it's not a kenku.
It's not a kenku, but it's almost a kenku.
Yeah.
However, like Marcus role plays this character Onyx as one not wanting to be called a birdman, and then two not being able to have strife with anyone. He has to make up with everyone. Like if there's a disagreement, they have to come to terms, and if they don't, nothing can progress at all, which is kind of fun. It's a fun character concept.
It will be a fun thing with NPCs.
Yeah, definitely
in the
NPC.
In the future. But we got introduced to Tom.
We got introduced to Tom and Onyx joins the group, and that's mostly where that session also ends. There's some combat, and it's why we're patrolling and trying to keep guard over this van. There's like a small combat in between. We just like taking
do you
up.
Remember what we talked with Tom about?
No, I don't actually.
So that's the thing with, if I remember correctly, I'm not the best at this, but he tells us that he wanted to help us, and also just wanted to like check in on us. That's what I remember, and he told us that he would like to build us a item of our own choice.
Yeah, so that we would get magic custom magic items, I suppose.
Yeah. So that's like our DM's way of like awarding good gameplay, I guess, or something, or just putting his or our touch on our character.
Yeah.
So it's just some kind of character building. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And then we come to the latest session, which you weren't there for.
Oh.
So the rest of this will be a surprise for you.
Somewhat
of a surprise. You've heard some things. Basically, we bury Crocker and Onyx joins the group.
Yes.
And replaces Crocker, sadly. Same player, doesn't matter. But while we're patrolling at some point, no, it's after we've been patrolling and we're resting, we wake up to this like scream or howl that like moves in a sound wave across the entire swamp. And we wake up because of this. And then we go out into like we search around the caravans and our tents to see if anything's happened or we are under attack or something like that. And then we find that there's a grung walking around in a camp. And at first we think it's Crocker. And Kara runs over to him, but it isn't. Some kind of undead grung. And we have a small skirmish with this grung, but it manages to escape, and this grung is also a caster, wizard, sorcerer, or something like that. But it manages to escape at the last minute from us. And then Braun looks at his magical pendant. Braun has this pendant that's linked with his brother so that they can see basically how healthy the other person is. And he sees that the pendant has turned from fully green to almost fully red, meaning that his brother is so close to dying. And at that point we agreed that we should try and run into the swamp to save his brother. That's what Braun wants to do. And Kara backs him up because you're gonna save your brother, of course you're gonna do this, I'm gonna help you. The only one who's against it, I think it's Onyx, but that's because his player Marcus wants to fucking rest. He's playing a warlock and has used his 2 spell slots, so he wants to take a short rest. Our DM says that he can't take a short rest if we just rush into the swamp, and we wanna rush because we're trying to save Braun's brother. We decide to run in after much discussion at the table, and whilst running in over halfway there, maybe, Braun looks at his pendant and sees that it's fully red and his brother is dead. And a little while after that, we come into contact with actually the Vel's army and adventuring group that had saved the civilians, and they come out with like 12,000 civilians or something like that. And Braun gets the news that his brother has died. He knew it from the pendant, but Marcus tells him that's what happened, and Marcus also says that they weren't prepared for what actually happened. Apparently there wasn't only one lich, there were apparently several liches fighting in the swamp.
Fighting each other?
Yeah, also that. They fought one lich and almost killed it, and then other liches arrived and finished it off, and then tried destroying the phylactery that keeps the lich alive. And then they find out that there's like several liches in the swamp fighting at all times apparently. But they managed to escape, having lost 70% of the adventurers and most of the army. But they escaped with 12,000 civilians maybe, trying to keep these malnourished and hurt people alive. And then we get them out of the swamp, out to the camp, or rather the vans that we were supposed to protect. But since we left, it was overrun and destroyed. The two other adventuring parties that were supposed to help guard the vans together with us failed and were killed. So a lot of the resources that was supposed to be guarded and was meant to help the civilians escape from the swamp and get back to Vels has been destroyed, burned, ruined. So Marcus has to make the decision that 1/3 of the civilians, which are the most hurt and has the least chance of survival, have to get left behind. Yeah. And he makes an announcement. Yeah, faktisk. Okay. A little too serious. But Marcus makes the announcement that 1/3 of the people are basically gonna be left for dead. And this doesn't sit right within Pegatum. And Lilith, the player of In, decides to play her character as the character would do it. So instead of leaving with the 8,000 civilians and the adventurers and the army, he stays behind with the civilians that are left behind to try and help them. And even though he knows that all of them are going to die, he will help them into salvation because he's such a believer in Lathander that he'll try and help them get into heaven and make them believe that's what's best. And that's how Lilith retires her character without actually wanting to. She didn't intend this to happen at all. And I can feel that at the table she's maybe a bit disgruntled at the fact that the rest of the party's like, we're not gonna stay here. Kara's only worried about, well, surviving herself and then keeping her brother alive. So leaving behind 1/3 of the civilians.
And Aki is like, fuck them.
Exactly. So the rest of the party, like all adventurers, are guaranteed a spot on the caravans home to Vels. So we leave the swamp, and the session ends with In basically
sacrificing herself.
Sacrificing himself to try and yeah. It's kind of confusing with a female player and a male character, but I've done the reverse.
Yeah,
and it's confusing sometimes. But basically, In sacrifices himself to try and help the remaining civilians as much as he can, and that's where the session actually ends. So maybe next session Lilith shows up with another character. I told her that she should try playing something other than a life cleric. Because that's apparently what she plays 90% of the time in all games she plays.
Yeah.
So I told her she should try and be more creative.
Well, she's a barbarian in my campaign.
That's true.
Yeah.
She's playing a barbarian in your one-shot campaign.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, but it's not like I have any control over what she does, but I was like, do something creative. You have the option now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the recap of everything that happened until now. I think it got into more detail here at the end because you weren't there, so I wanted to. And it's also the most recent session. It happened like 3 days ago, so I remember that a lot more clearly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so
that was cool.
That's it for now.
Yeah, I hope the sound quality is a lot better.
I hope
in these recordings than it was in the first one, because that wasn't.
God damn.
It wasn't
horrible,
great.
man.
Yeah, that was. I've got a lot of complaints.
But, a lot.
I think like 4 people, 4 or 5
it's
people.
Not a lot, but
it's not because there's so many watching it, but like 4 or 5 different people have told me like you gotta do something about the sound. So maybe this helps a little.
Mm.
And then we'll look into
Cross
getting
our fingers.
microphones.
Yeah.
Also.
But yes.
Yeah. I think that's it for now.
Yeah.